Hey there, I thought I'd do one of my signature dishes and kind of walk you through what that looks like. It's the 12-hour roasted lasagna, which I love, and it gets an awesome reception. So I thought I'd pull that together with you. And look, I also thought maybe an idea of this was cooking with Gags. So let's see where we go. And of course, I've got my support here too, Maggie, always helping out. One of the things that we do is making sure prep. So getting everything ready first. So I've got meat going there. I've got beef and about half a kilo of beef and about half a kilo of lamb as well. They're good to mix within the lasagna. Gives it that flavour. Chopped up red onions, one or two of those. I'm hoping this is going to serve about 8, so it's a fairly big one. Chopped up onions, lots of garlic. I think you can never overdo the garlic. So whilst we start, let me just put that into what I call a slow cooker. But of course, you want to make sure that you have got oil in that for a start. So let's do that. Not too much oil, because too much oil can make it, once you put the meat in, it gets really oily, so we want to try and reduce too much of that. You can actually take some of that oil out a little bit later on, and I'll show you through that process. Whilst this isn't going to be the full 12 hours, I'll just show you the setup and then a couple of next processes we go through. So allow that to cook off a little bit, the onion. And then I'll put in, as I said, a fair bit of garlic. Give it a fair bit there. Give it a mix again. You don't want it too dry. One of the things with when you're cooking lasagna is once you put it all together, particularly the meat, you don't want the meat dry. So it's probably a little bit wetter than when you're making a bolognese, because it does heat up, obviously, when you get it through the oven, and we'll show you that process. I'll bring that back tomorrow, that process. So just while waiting for that to go, you don't want to over it, just sweat the onion a little bit and then bringing in the meat as well. So putting in the meat there, this is upsetting Maggie because she thought she was going to get some. It's probably good to try and break up the meat as much as you can, even though that for such a long time on this cook, you will notice that it'll break down anyway. But we're really just browning off the meat here. You can probably see, or not. Let me get you a little visual on that, see what that looks like. So just really trying to break that down as much as possible, bashing it a fair bit where you can. The great thing about this slow cooker is it's a one pot thing, so it means you can, once you've done all that, transfer it into the slow cooker, and we'll show you how you do that shortly. I want to make sure that meat's just brown off a little bit before we put in the tomato kind of base and sauces. Otherwise it kind of is boiled. You don't want to boil the meat as such. You want to try and brown it off a little bit where possible. So we'll see that there. I've got a Dell on in the background as well. It always helps. Maggie doesn't mind a Dell. You can put that on a fairly high heat as well. Putting that brown off, moving it around, breaking it up a fair bit as well. Now, what I do like doing, I've got a can of chopped up tomatoes. That's a full can, so that's quite a large can. Alone, that's probably not ready yet. Get that bit browner. Moving it around. You can put herbs in there. Sometimes I might do it now. I put a fair bit of a large pinch of salt in. Of course, don't overdo the salt. Very hard to return a meal back if you put salt in. You keep adding salt, a bit of pepper, a couple of grinds of pepper there. If, like me, you enjoy chilli, you can squeeze in just a little bit of chilli too. Again, depends to taste whether you like it hot or not. I always get the complaints either way, so I'll just squeeze some of that in there. Brown it off. And this is close to it. Once we add the sauces, the tomato and a bit of tomato sauce, and then I've got a secret ingredient I want to talk to you about, which I learnt through various cooking shows. So let's put that canned tomato in. And again, I mentioned that it's great to have this fairly wet. You can keep adding to it. I also put in a jar of kind of tomato puree sauce stuff, which again is adding a lot of that liquid in there. You might even, rather than wasting too much of that, put a little bit of water in it. Shake it up. Again, if it's too wet, you can actually remove a lot of that moisture later on as it goes through that process. But because we're cooking it for such a long time, a lot of it does evaporate as well. And then the final product, when we get to that tomorrow, will be in the oven. You're losing a lot of that moisture as well. So when we're putting in some other additives tomorrow, we'll go through the bechamel sauce. We'll look at that. We'll look at adding in some spinach, probably not from Costco, although I have been trying to get my hands on some of that Costco spinach. But once you're adding all that stuff, you are losing a lot of that moisture. We want to make sure it's fairly moist. I've had lasagnas, I've had lots of lasagnas, but I've had lasagnas where they literally feel like a soup. In fact, I had one recently and it was like a soup in a bowl. That's okay, but you don't want to go the other side where it's actually too dry. So just mixing that through. As I said, got lots of liquid in there. Sometimes it's good to put a little bit, and I'll do that now, just a little bit of splash of red wine. Again, not overdoing it, because it does, so smell that, because it does, it can be a very strong flavour. So literally, a couple 100 mils, not too much, not overdone. I tend to leave that to a stroganoff, a bit more of the red wine, so don't put too much in. Again, just mixing that round. What else we got there? I think we've got most of our ingredients in there now, except one that I said I'd mention. And I'll do that quickly now. Let me just have a look. There's a couple of extra tomatoes there that I just throw in. Whatever's in the fridge in terms of that tomato base is really good to add into your lasagna. Give that extra flavour. I've got a little bit of passata sauce here. I might put just a little bit of that in. Again, just to give you a little bit of that, in fact I'll put the whole thing in, that tomatoey flavour, that traditional tomato flavour for your lasagna. Gives it that flavour. Very similar, of course, when we're doing a bolognese, and at some stage I might even do I can do a 5-minute bolognese, or I can do a sort of a 6-hour, or this one being a 12-hour in a slow cooker. And literally just setting it aside and allowing it to cook through and really break down that meat. I know Mum says that, James, at one stage that you overcooked it. Well, I don't believe so. I think you can keep cooking it. 12 hours is excessive, but it certainly sounds good to do a 12-hour slow roasted bolognese sauce for that delightful lasagna. Here's one of the little tricks I thought I was going to show you. It's a bit of milk, just a tiny bit of milk in there. It really gives it that creaminess to the sauce itself. And of course it complements the bechamel sauce that we'll have a go at tomorrow. So again, don't overdo it. Probably, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 mils in that. Really just giving it that sort of that slightly whitish colour. I'm going to bring that camera across shortly so you can see what that's looking like. Let's do that now. So a real creaminess coming to it now, and that's just about it. Of course, what we want to make sure we do is once we get it on the slow cooker itself, really making sure that we stir it every now and then. As I said, if there's too much oil in there, and you can see the oil, it will rise to the top, just get a coffee cup and scoop that oil out, because it really does get quite oily, and you don't necessarily need a lot of that oil. It certainly doesn't do well for my digestive system, and whilst I'm not the average digestive system, it's good to get it out of there. It's a little bit too oily. So that's really it. That's that stage where you can now just let it go. You could add some other herbs in there if you're basil or some of those other kind of bolognese herbs. I try to pull back a little bit on the herbs, just maybe sticking with the salt and pepper, a bit of chili, the garlic, obviously the onions, and you can add to that later. So that's something that you can certainly add on later. So that's about it. So thank you for that part. As I said, I'm going to keep stirring it over the next few hours. What are we now? 10:30 in the morning, and then we'll come back and show you as it progresses. All the best. Bye. Okay, we're at 11:30. Let's just have a look at this and see what needs to be done. Just a little bit of a stir, just to move the heat round a bit. As I said, we're probably going to go for another 4 or 5 hours here, on high as well. All right, we'll come back to you when we're ready. Okay, I thought we'd just give another look to see where we're at with the meat. It's just, albeit just another half hour or so since the last stir, but it's just worth keeping it stirred. You can see there that the oil's starting to rise to the top. If you want to take some of that out, just with a coffee cup or something, we'll get that out. I just thought I'd mention it, given it's Christmas time. I was at Coles before and obviously getting ready to wrap some presents, and I was looking for some of that double-sided invisible tape. When I went up to one of the staff there and I said, "Oh, have you got any of that invisible tape?" She goes, yeah, it should be in aisle 5. And I said, "Oh no," I looked there and I couldn't see it. So she said, "Oh, we'll go down there together and have a look." So that was a wasted joke. But anyway, there's the meat. As I said, keeps going for another few hours. We'll come back each time and stir it. Okay, we're back here. Let's have a look. It's, what time are we? 20 past 3. I know what it's going to look like, but let's have a look here. Been cooking really well now for a number of hours. So what you can see there, if I get you, she might turn that. How do I turn that around? There we go. You can see the oil at the top, right? So you can either, as I said earlier, you can either remove that, or you can just stir that through. I'm happy to kind of stir it through. It's not as much as I thought there was going to be there. We're going to give this about another hour, and then we're going to cool it down. One thing what you try and do, we can see the edge there, and I'll do it now. Just taking that edge of the bolognese sauce off. See how you can, where are we? There we go. It's pretty burnt there. You don't want that burnt. It doesn't taste good. It really does take a bit charcoaly, so that happens when you've had it on for some time. So give it a stir. As you can see there, I've had enough time to go to the gym. Cricket's on. Give that a stir. You can see that creaminess too in it. That was from that bit of milk that we put in, and I will have an opportunity to write the full recipe up later, and that'll be at the end of this session. So, all right, we'll see you in about an hour. Bye now. Okay, that's the first 6 hours. Let's have a look at that. Take the lid off. Again, you can see a bit of that oil on top. Turn it off now. That's because I want to cool it down, and then put it in the fridge overnight, and then we'll give it the next burst tomorrow. A bit like a curry the next day. It really starts to settle in once you give it that overnight cooling process. And we'll see you in the morning. Well done. Okay, time's up. I think that's about 12 hours. So let's have a look at the final product before we turn it off. It smells good. Let's have a look. Beautiful. Might give that a stir. We'll turn that off now. And a bit like before, making sure that you get that burnt section just off the edge. Don't want that. Okay, welcome back. Day 2. The bolognese has been cooking for another 6 hours today, so that's done. So let's have a look at that. That's absolutely beautiful. That's cooled down, been cooked, 12 hours all up. And now we're going to get into the bechamel sauce. So I'll get the bechamel sauce ready. Let's get that so you can actually see my head. So again, preparation with this and kind of, I don't have any particular measurements I use as such, but what I will do first is a fair knob or so of butter. Sound like Jamie Oliver there with a knob of butter. And bechamel sauce is very much the flour, the butter, milk. I put a bit of cream in too, salt, pepper. I throw an egg in, and then lots of different cheese to give that really good flavour, which goes well in. And also, pardon me, I like to make a fair bit of the bechamel sauce because we do a few layers of it in the lasagna itself. So I will just load some stuff in. Let's go with a bit of milk, not too much. What do we got there? Half a cup at this stage. And you this is one of those things you just keep adding to, particularly when it comes to the wet and the dry. So the flour and the milk, just adding to it, bit of salt at the start. Remember, like I said before, not too much salt because it's one of those things that's hard to get the salt out of the cooking. You can always add more salt later on. And bearing in mind that there's a lot of salt in the cheeses as well, so you don't want to over salt it. So got that on fairly high, heating it up, got the butter and the milk going. Might give you a quick look at that. Nothing too awesome about it this stage. So, but this is one of those, a lot of lasagnas don't necessarily have bechamel sauce, and I think you're missing out if you haven't got it. So certainly love to load in. So a bit of butter in there, a bit of milk's warming up. And now, just as I said, you're just adding flour to it, just to thicken it up and give it that kind of that texture. Don't have it on too high because you boil the milk. I need some more milk in that. Probably should have had that prepped. Okay, a bit more milk. Might even put the cream in as well, just to give it that creaminess. You don't necessarily need to put cream in, but as I said, it's one of those things you can just kind of add stuff to. Stirring it as much as you can, just to let it thicken up. It does take a while, and if it's not thickening up straight away, it usually means you put a bit more flour in and really kind of let it thicken up as it heats up. Trying to get the lumps out of it too, because it will be quite lumpy to start with. You might even want to use a sifter to get rid of some of those lumps, but really just breaking up those lumps, because if you don't break them up now, the lumps of flour, it stays with it for the rest of the cooking process, and then it becomes quite lumpy when you're putting it out on the lasagna bed itself or the layers. So I might keep going. I'll put a pause on there and I'll keep going here. Okay, here's what I'm going to do now. Cheese, lots of cheese, different types of cheese. So I've got a mozzarella there. Again, I don't think you can overdo the cheese. So mozzarella, I'll go some Parmesan as well. I'll go all that Parmesan. As I said, there's no real strict measurements to any of this. A bit more of that Parmesan. That's just a shade Parmesan, and a little bit of cheddar as well. So 3 different types of cheeses here, and we'll really give it that lift. I'm making lots of it, remember, so that's okay. Always like adding a little bit more pepper in. You might even want to add a chilli in. Here's one thing that I do as well from here. Just break an egg in as well. Gives it that a little bit of thickness as well, but it makes it, just adds to that bechamel sauce. So I'm going to keep going with this, and I'll see you soon. Just to give you a sense of what this is like, it really starts to thicken up as we see. It's like a full-on thick cheese. But the bechamel sauce. And of course, making sure we mix those 3 cheeses, the flour, the butter, the milk together. If you feel like it's too thick, add a little bit more. If you feel like it's not thick enough, you know, a little bit more flour as well. So there's lots in there. That's starting to look really good. So I might just about do that, and then we'll start layering up the lasagna itself shortly. Okay, I don't always do this, but given that I've got a lot of spinach, and the issue with spinach at the moment, I know this is the good stuff. I'm going to make the bechamel sauce with spinach, so it'll thicken up. So we'll end up putting, because it breaks down really quickly, I'm having to use all of that. Shoddy there. And just mixing that through. Really just mixing that through and allowing the heat to kind of break the spinach down, wilt it down a little bit. You can even just start to mix up. This is obviously you'll just make it quite thick still, but that's okay because it'll mix up and the heat of the cheese will melt through. Let's have a look at that, what that looks like. So here you might even want to put a little bit more milk in, just to keep it fairly runny still, not too runny. Remember the bolognese is going to be fairly wet, I think I mentioned that, so it doesn't dry out when you give it that time in the oven, and soaking up from the pasta sheets, the lasagna sheets itself, so that looks quite good. Okay, now we've got the bechamel sauce done. The bolognese has had 6 hours yesterday, fridge last night, 6 hours today, so that's perfect. Got the fresh lasagna sheets, much better than the dry ones. So that those soft ones, you get those in the refrigerated section of the supermarket. A fairly large pan, because I think I mentioned it's going to serve up to sort of 8+ people. Here's the trick. So make sure that you spray the bottom of whatever pan or tray you're going to use with a little bit of, that's a canola oil. This just stops everything sticking to the base when you're trying to get it out. And it also allows to keep that kind of moisture going as well. One of the other tricks I do is making sure your first layer is a bit of bolognese, because if it's going to be that lasagna sheet, it literally will just stick. So have that just a really light sprinkle of the bolognese sauce, just spread it right around. Probably see that. Get those tomatoes there for your first layer. And then literally what we're doing is just layering it up. So with the long sheets, these will probably break because they've been out a little while, dried up a bit, that's okay. And given the size or the shape of this pan, you're better off to cut some of these sheets to size. So, you know, making sure that you've got it fully covered at the bottom. That's right, you kind of get a sense of what that pattern looks like, what you're going to do. And then, as I said, just layering it up. So I like to layer it up with bolognese, and then obviously you might do another layer of the bechamel sauce, and just keep building it as you do that. So I'll keep doing that, and I'll come back to you when that's done. Just to give you a sense of what that's starting to look like. You can see the layers coming together. Don't have to overdo it with some of these layers, because it's going to be quite a large, fairly deep lasagna as well. And you probably want more layers of the pasta than the layers of the meat sauce and the bechamel. So that's starting to look good. Another one on there. Might even put a little bit more on because I've only got that one. There, perfect. One there, spread it up. Cut this last bit. What we got there? Got enough to kind of do that whole edge there. See, we've used all that lasagna sheet. And literally the last thing we might even just do is just the bechamel sauce on top, and then you've got a number of layers there with the bechamel, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. This sauce, as I said, can't have a lasagna without it. I'll pull that together and show you the final product. Let's have a look at that last bit of bechamel on there. And then we'll just spread it just with a spatula, probably easiest. Getting it all out of the bottom of the pan, a bit easier than a wooden fork. Spoon, sorry, a wooden spoon. Okay, that's probably all. And again, just what you're doing, a little bit like plastering. Just bring it to the edge as well, just so you've got all the fresh lasagna sheet covered. Remember that you've already sprayed the edge with that, what was it, the oil, the canola oil or vegetable oil, whatever you want to use, sunflower oil. Just some sort of sprayable oil makes it a bit easier. If you don't have that, you can just run some butter along the edge, or even oil if you want. Right, so that's that. A little bit of pepper on top maybe. If you really want to lift it up, just the last little bit of shaved parmesan just on the top, and this will really help it just sort of get a really yummy cheesy flavour. You don't have to overdo it because you've got so much cheese in there already. A bit more on the top there. And that is your 12-hour roasted, long slow cook lasagna. Now, for that size lasagna, you're probably going to need a good 40 to 45 minutes or so in the oven at around sort of 180 degrees. So that should do it. I'm going to let that sit for a while because we don't have people coming for some time yet. But essentially that's it. That's it. And I'll give you a shot of the product once we pull it out, and of course a shot of the amazing smiles when people jump in that first bite. I'll just also show you that there is still a fair bit of that sauce left. And of course that can be scooped up and frozen if need be, and used for bolognese. Alrighty, see you soon. Been on for about 40 minutes. Oh yeah, it looks so good. Right, we'll get it out shortly.